This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, great. Thank you. There we go. So with that, we're going to go ahead and call the Citizens Participation Committee meeting to order. So we're going to start with a roll call to make sure that I have everyone properly recorded for attendance and such. So I have Stuart Frescus.
Yes.
Gene Croshin.
Here.
Steve Clevenger. I can see Steve's name, but I can't hear him, so I don't know if his mic's working or not.
I just logged in, so I didn't hear anything you said.
Okay, there you go. All right, we're just taking a roll call. We're taking a roll call, Steve. Okay, so we have Steve on the line with us, and
Yep.
then I think Lynn Nelson is here as well.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Aria Steiger, who is one of our transportation planners, and she's going to kick us off by talking about a road safety audit we did out in the county by Jackson Highway, Lindbergh Road, 400 West, and State Road 26, which is quite an intersection. So Aria, go ahead and.
All right, and I'll need to share my screen with y'all here. Let's see. There's a button for that here somewhere. Okay, I found it. Okay, there we go. Hopefully y'all can see the road safety audit here. So what is a road safety audit? It's basically when a jurisdiction asks us to evaluate the safety of an intersection or a corridor, usually in light of some incident that's happened or history or pattern of dangerous crashes or behavior. So we'll take a look at a particular area for that. So essentially, we will do some background research on the intersection. Yes?
Are you showing a screen?
I can't hear you. What now?
Are you showing your screen?
I am. Can you not see that?
I can't see it. I don't know if anybody else can.
I can see it.
I can see it as well.
If you're having trouble seeing it in GoToMeeting, you can also watch the YouTube or Facebook stream, and it'll be a bit delayed, but it should show up there as well. Sorry about that. Yep. So to perform the road safety audit, we'll do some background research. We'll look at the crash history. We'll look at the physical characteristics of the road, traffic counts, that sort of thing. And we will organize a group of local experts. So that typically includes the city or county engineer, whose jurisdiction it is, sheriffs, fire, INDOT, both the central office and our district office in Crawfordsville. If applicable, ask the schools, basically folks that are involved in transportation who, have a specialized knowledge of the area, we'll invite to participate so that they can share their insights on, the dangers and potential improvements of the area. So for this particular road safety audit, we looked at Jackson Highway, Lindbergh Road, North 400 West, and State Road 26 West. So a bit of a mouthful there. It's this weird kind of triangular intersection out west of West Lafayette that I think we've all driven through at least once and remembered. It's so unique. So the report itself is a bit lengthy, and I'm just going to kind of go through it in order, just as kind of an overview, I guess. I won't read every single thing here. But, we have the list of who we had available for our in-person meeting here. We did invite a lot of people, but not everyone was able to attend, unfortunately. So, but you can see we had good representation from INDOT, from County Highway, from our office, area plan, from the sheriff. So a good turnout, a good variety of insights and expertise. So the report starts out with just details about the physical characteristics of the roads. So the width, the shoulders or lack thereof, this area is very rural, so it has open ditches on the sides. It's 2 lanes with no curb and gutter or anything. We talk about stuff like the pavement rating. So that's a PACER rating, if you're familiar with that system. Basically, how cracked it is, how deteriorating is it. That sort of thing. We took photos, of course, throughout our entire investigation here on site, so you can see the situation. So we also included information such as the federal functional class of the road. That is to say, whether it's more about access or about moving traffic. A lot of these roads are collectors, which means that they're more about moving traffic than they are about access to, driveways or businesses. Of course, being so rural, this is just an area they pass through. So these are all collector roads. The pavement out here is generally pretty good on all the roads, not perfect, but plenty acceptable during the time that we went out in 2023, I think it was. And the speed limits out there, as you all are probably familiar with, are mostly high. This north-south, north 400 west is the only kind of slow one, 35. All the others are, 40, 50 miles per hour. Yeah, minor arterial, so higher federal functional class roads here that are for moving traffic. So we also classified how many driveways there were, which there's a surprising amount, actually, of driveways here. There's a bunch of houses nearby. There's the old schoolhouse nearby, which I probably have a picture of here somewhere. I may have already passed it. Well, it's back there behind this. Oh, you can kind of see it peeking out here. So that was a basic investigation of the situation. We also looked at, what kind of pavement markings are out there, what kind of signs are out there. Missing infrastructure like street lights, not that, in the county there's a whole lot of street lights, all that sort of thing, just on the basic details. We also looked at traffic volumes. So this is probably of interest to a lot of folks, right? The annual average daily traffic is pretty high. I mean, 1,000, it's not like, South Street or whatever, but 1,000 trips per day on Jackson Highway, 2,000 on North 400 West heading up towards Sagamore Parkway, a fair number. Almost 1,000 heading south further just out into the county, away from anything else, I guess, towards Division Line Road. And on Lindbergh, almost 2,000 average daily traffic. So, 3,000 on State Road 26 West. Reasonably high volumes, for being such a rural area. We also talked about truck traffic, which out here wasn't a particular problem, but there was a noticeable amount. Over 5% of traffic was trucks, according to our classification. So aside from the physical characteristics and traffic counts, we also looked at the crashes, of course. This is kind of the key data for the road safety audit. And I guess I should have mentioned at the top, but you all probably remember that there was a fatality crash with a bicyclist. And let me see. There's a bicyclist that was out there when we were out there. I definitely talk about it here. Injury crashes. It was at Lindbergh and 400. Here we go. Yeah, fatality crash with a bicyclist in 2018. In May, we discussed a bit about the crash as well as other types of crashes there. So, 24 crashes across the 5-year period we looked at. So fatality crash rate of 4%. The injury crash rate, 25% among all crashes, pretty high. I think our average countywide injury crash rate is like 19%. around the same time frame. So that's an above average injury crash rate here. We have details about the conditions under which the crashes occurred, most during the daylight, which is common for crashes. Most people travel during the day, so the highest traffic volumes are during the day in well-lighted conditions. So you expect to see a lot of crashes during daylight under well-lighted conditions. This is all pretty common. I don't think we noticed any particular unusual trends in situations that caused crashes, although visibility, I think, as you'll see later in the report, was potentially a problem, and one that our experts called out as well. So, and if you want, more details, you can check out the whole report on our website. It's on our crash page on the tippecanoe.in.gov EPC section. So after going over the basics, we look at the observations of all the staff members who showed up on site. So we all stood out there for, several hours, looking at each intersection, observing traffic, chatting about what we noticed, problems we saw, from our particular areas of expertise. And the report kind of contains a condensed version of all of our analysis and observations. And I don't want to read through all of this. We looked at basically every intersection individually, and I also started with an overall analysis of the intersections. This overall one, I'll go through this a little bit. So while we were out there, we definitely saw a good mix of types of traffic. We saw trucks, we saw bicyclists, we saw school buses, we saw trucks carrying hazardous materials, we saw regular sedans and pickup trucks and all that. So a good variety of users on the road. I don't think we saw any pedestrians, but as I note in the report, it seems like people potentially expect pedestrians at this intersection, which surprised me based on some of the signage that citizens had placed out there for advertising or whatever. So surprising to me, but that's why we go out to these sites and really look at them. So we analyzed what people were doing while we were out there, rolling stops, looking at how people turned, looking at situations like people running off the road or not having enough space to turn. So, and then the report goes through each intersection in detail specifically, on a lot of these things. We point out problems like the extreme angles, these intersections, these aren't right angle intersections, which for older drivers or those with mobility problems could impact their ability to navigate safely through here. And one thing that, if you've been through here, you probably remember is this fence on 400 West here on the north side of the intersection that definitely blocks visibility. And here you can see in the photo, these white vehicles, if you're not paying close attention, if it's cloudy, foggy, rainy, dark, anything, you could easily miss vehicles being hidden by this fence here.
I've always wondered if that fence is illegal and that it violates the vision triangle. It is not grandfathered in. It's only been up there for about 12 years at most.
Really?
Yeah, it's not a long-standing fence. The current owners put it up.
Interesting.
Yeah, it looks like it's in the vision triangle, and I've always wondered if it's illegal because of that.
Yeah, I don't think
the building on the caddy corner side is grandfathered in. It's fairly old, and it's definitely in the vision triangle too on Wimber 400. But
yeah, regardless of its legality, it's certainly a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So, one way or another, we would hope that it could be improved somehow to improve visibility. So, other stuff on the particular details, we looked at, just evidence of what people have done, where the pavement is worn, where their tire tracks are. Just a lot of observations to see how people actually use this compared to the data that we can get from like traffic counts or whatever. So after the observation section, we have the recommendations section. which is kind of the crux of this report. So the road safety audit, this is just, I don't want to say informal, but it's a document that by itself doesn't do anything. It basically allows us instead to use it as justification for funding projects or for, particular alternatives for which projects get built here. So it's a foundational document that's important, and the recommendations made in this document are key for that, for future safety projects and improvements. So again, I've kind of summarized a lot of what we had talked about while we were out there. Some of the members emailed me with additional comments, drawings, etc. after the meeting at the site. So I included those in that report. They went back to their offices and drew up some diagrams of potential alternatives. And just going through some of these, missing pavement, better stop signs that are more visible, payment for large vehicles making turns, with the truck traffic there. And in the pictures, you saw the tire tracks going off the road. Some of these, like a roundabout, potentially is a potential alternative, are more expensive and require more study than other alternatives, like additional paint. That's an easy, cheap, quick solution. And already, actually, out there, the county highway has already made changes to stop signs and things as a quick solution, hopefully, to some of these problems. But these others, would require probably federal funding or other more detailed investigation. So, we have some drawings here of potential roundabout configurations, if that's a solution. Many people did point out a roundabout or some sort of dog bone intersection as a more permanent solution. And there were a number of different geometries that were suggested for that. So, Stu has this roundabout here in the field with all these legs kind of curving to have good geometry with hitting that roundabout. Laura Slusher from ITAP proposed a dog bone, and this is from Connecticut, just to give you an example of what that could look like. But this situation, in Connecticut is very similar to ours, basically, so you can see how it might, how such a thing might look out there. And this one even has sidewalks included, which I know our office's long-range plan or township plan, I think, proposes some multi-use trails out in this area. So, this multi-use trail along here might be similar to something that we could potentially have in our county as well. So a good example. I like that photo. Tim Watson from INDOT proposed some different geometry for a roundabout. Again, reorienting the road so that there's a good configuration of approaches to the roundabout. And Tim also suggested, instead of a roundabout, some T intersections, changing the geometry of the roads so that you have multiple T's instead of the awkward angles that are hard to see and, have potentially unexpected behaviors. So, removing this and then curving the road over here to a T, or a T from Jackson Highway to the State Road, potentially. Here's kind of an overall, completely removing Lindbergh Road and doing a T into the State Road from here. And again, all of these are just proposals. We call them alternatives in transportation planning. So none of these are guaranteed to be built, or even these exact examples might be built. We will look at many alternatives, including, a no-build option or other options before coming to a final solution for final improvement for this area. So, yeah, some email chats that I included in this document. And that's kind of, the gist of it. The remainder is, again, just some like appendix sort of stuff. Some maps with just detailed information, some crash diagrams for these. Maybe you'd be interested to see for how different types of crashes occurred. So, like swerving and running off the road, rear ends, injury crash back here. So this is the key intersection here, Lindbergh and 400, where that fatality occurred. And you can see the number of right angle crashes. It's crazy on this north-south approach. Just so many. So these are the problems we try and address with these road safety audits and the patterns that you see emerge when you do an analysis. Very revealing. And at 400 in the state road, again, a lot of right angle crashes. So, well, right angle per se, almost right angle crashes. That's how they're defined. So, we have some details about the exact numbers and years, what types of factors were involved in these crashes, chronological information, just a lot of details, topography, property boundaries, zoning, historic structures. Again, that historic school is there. And just a lot of pictures. And these, not to advertise, but like some of these shocked me, like just people putting up 8.5 by 11s on these phone poles as if they expect pedestrians to see these adverts, shocked me. So, and just some details about, what we talked about and how we formatted our responses and analysis with some handouts and stuff that I provided during our session. So traffic counts, just a lot of data basically in this report. So I think that covers the whole report. Let me go back to the start here. So did any of you have any questions or comments about this?
This is Stephen. I actually live in the area and go through that intersection on a regular basis. And I guess one of the things that I have noticed, especially after Klondike was redone with the roundabouts, is a lot of people are using 400 between Wimberg Road and US 52 as a shortcut because they can speed, even though the speed limit is 35 and 40 miles an hour, people are going 50 miles an hour or more on it. And they can't do that on Klondike. And so instead of going down to Klondike and having to go through the roundabouts and being slower, it's actually being used as kind of a speed shortcut. And that's my understanding that there are actually apps that direct semis down 400, and it's really a narrow road, and there are vehicles that actually, if they try and turn onto 250 off of 400 or in either direction, actually off of 250 onto 400, can actually hit telephone poles or go off the road. It's better than it used to be, but it's still kind of an issue at that intersection.
Geez.
So there are a lot of semis, especially if you go further north. There's actually that one-lane barrel railroad overpass, and that has some concerns with all the semis that are going down the road at high speeds.
Yes, yeah, we had some speed data in the report there about average speeds and 85th percentile speed, which is a common metric that we'll look at. And they were definitely above the post limits.
Was that taken at the intersection, or was that taken further down the roads?
All of our traffic counts are mid-block.
Okay.
So yeah, although we did have, I think, some turning movement analysis there from the highway department. But yeah, the speeds we can only, with our equipment, unless we set out a special, let's see, where is that? Traffic counts, yeah,
whatever the solution is, I'd rather see something that distracts drivers from trying to use 400 as a speedy shortcut and use either 231 or Klondike Road.
Certainly, yeah. Yeah, here's that turning analysis.
Okay.
Yeah, that's at 400 in Lindbergh. So
one other comment from his historical perspective, back in the 70s, 26 did not have stop signs at all. So on
Oh,
26
okay.
curves, and there were actually a number of fatal accidents because either people on 26 going on the Jackson Highway, or going out of town, or 26 going on the Lindbergh Road, because it looks like it goes straight, did not yield and did not realize that they had to yield because they're going off the state highway, and caused some
Yes.
major crashes there.
Yes, that was a concern we had as well at 400 Lindbergh, because that's a two-way stop currently,
Right.
with 400 stopping and Lindbergh being no stop sign.
And if you are heading south on 400 and want to either turn on Lindbergh or cross to turn onto 26, there are a lot of vehicles that are coming off of 26 that are making that left-hand turn onto 400. And so you're sitting there waiting for a while.
Yes.
During busy times.
Yeah, the configuration of this triangular intersection, especially on 400 there and Lindbergh, with those short stopping areas, is definitely awkward. So I think that's why a lot of folks proposed roundabouts as a solution to completely eliminate that kind of queuing or left-hand turns. So
it's my understanding also
hopeful
that years ago they were looking at putting a roundabout in before roundabouts became real popular at this intersection.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, of course. I appreciate all those comments. Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Yes, so just to add some information to the process, so we do have a meeting with some of the stakeholders scheduled for later this month to discuss how to proceed with the project. So that will include APC, the County Highway Department, as well as NDOT. And so we're going to kind of start the process to figuring out what alternatives we'd like to select, purchasing property, funding, of course, for this intersection, and all of those details that have to get sorted out for more of a solution to get in place. So obviously, as many of you know, transportation projects do not happen quickly, unfortunately. So even though there is a meeting coming up soon, it will, take a few years to get through the whole process. But it is underway and it is moving. So just wanted to give everyone a heads up that, this report is, or has laid the groundwork for what we're doing right now. So.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, so again, that full report can be found on the Tippecanoe County website. If you go to departments, APC, transportation crashes, it's there a little bit down the page. So along with all of our other road safety audits. All right, I guess that's all that I have. Then I'll turn it back over to you, Tim.
Okay, so we're going to see if we can do a handoff of presenters real quick, I think, before we get to our next couple items. So thank you, Aria, for presenting that. So hopefully you now can all see my screen. So I'm just going to pause real quick to check and see if people can see my screen, which is just the agenda for the meeting.
Yep, I got you, Tim.
Okay, so you can see me. So that means it's coming through the stream. So that's good. Okay. All right. So the first thing we're going to kind of talk about here is some information. So since we last met, there was a solar eclipse. I know this is, a little bit of old news now, but it was a pretty interesting traffic event. So we did want to kind of just cover some of what we saw in terms of traffic patterns during that event. So the data that we collected is from a couple of permanent count stations that NDOT has set up. So one of them is kind of just north of Lafayette, and then another one is just south of State Road 267. That's at the Brownsburg-Whitestown exit, number 133. And so what this first diagram shows is just 2022, 2023, and 2024 traffic data for the whole year. Obviously, 2024 is only partially complete, but you can kind of see for the most part, traffic data will stay fairly consistent along the interstate. There are, some known peaks. Obviously, there will always be, like a peak around Thanksgiving, for example. That's generally the highest travel volume each year on the interstate. And then, of course, there's like a 4th of July peak, and there are some other just general valleys, I suppose, whenever there's a snow event. So you can see some of those captured as well. So that's kind of just the overall setting. Specifically, I think this graph is a really great highlight of how big events like eclipses and so on really can affect traffic patterns. So we have the two different count stations. So the top one, the kind of orangish one, is the south of State Road 267, which is a little bit higher volume. And then the blue one is a little closer to us. So this is on I-65 north of Lafayette. And so what you see is a very, very distinct valley around the time when the eclipse occurred. And then that is immediately followed by a very, very high peak. And that's especially noticeable on State Road 267. You can really see where people were kind of done viewing the eclipse and then ready to hop back on and get on their way wherever that may be. So it's very clearly demonstrated by this graph. We do also have that in tabular format as well, which is available in the packet that was distributed for this meeting. And kind of what I want to highlight is the bottom left of this graph. So it talks about speeds and it puts them into different bins, so to speak. So we have people traveling from 0 to 20 miles an hour, which generally on an interstate is not something you want to see. You want vehicles to be in those higher speed brackets. And for most of the day, 0 to 20, there weren't any vehicles that were traveling at that speed. But then starting at 5 o'clock, especially from 8 to 9, it really picked up with vehicles traveling very slowly, showing a very, very high demand for the interstate at that time, which of course corresponds to the graph that we have up here. And then we have the same thing for 267. And then we also have a speed graph. So same data just shown on a graph. Again, you can kind of see some of the distinct speeds, especially if you look at, so I think this one, which is the station north of Lafayette, really showcases 0 to 20 really well, with a very, very distinct peak around the 8 to 9 p.m. That I was talking about earlier. So that is kind of what we were looking at. One of the reasons why we wanted to look at this information is, although eclipses aren't necessarily a common event in and of themselves, this kind of traffic pattern can be seen in other events where there's high demand. So let's take, for example, if there's some sort of emergency and a lot of people are getting on the interstate, maybe to evacuate for whatever reason, then we might see some of these same patterns. So it's pretty good data for not only us to have, but also for our partners in the emergency management space to look at as well. So we have shared this with them, kind of able to look through that and see what we can do if these events should be replicated, or these patterns should be replicated for any reason in the future. Okay, are there any questions about this before I move on to the next item?
It's very interesting data.
Yeah, it really is. And it is interesting. I didn't want to get too much into this, but there are a few differences between the two stations as well. Of course, the 267 one's a lot closer to Indy, which was a very active station, and a little bit different down there than up here. but also different lane configurations and such. So it was a pretty interesting little study that we put together, yeah. Okay, any other comments or questions before I move on to the next item? Okay, I will take that as a no. So our next item is kind of shifting gears a little bit to talking about air quality. So this is something that I want to first point out the source of this data, which is from the EPA. So obviously they monitor air quality throughout the country, and kind of the top part of this table shows historical data for Tippecanoe County. Obviously 2024 not complete yet, so take any 2024 data with a grain of salt. But 2023 is complete, and then we also have, for comparison purposes to Tippecanoe County, some of the other MPO areas, so the larger areas around the state, and kind of looking at how our air quality index compares to theirs. So really quickly, not to get too much into this, but for air quality index, a lower number is a good thing. So lower is better. It's like golf. You want to see a lower score, so to speak, whereas a higher score indicates some issues. So in Tippecanoe County, for the most part, 2023, the median 90th percentile didn't look too bad, but there was a pretty significant maximum air quality index. And I believe that was on one of those days when the smoke from the Canadian wildfires kind of was blowing down into Tippecanoe County, causing some of that haze, if you guys remember that. So I believe that would account for these 4 days that are listed as unhealthy for sensitive groups and the 2 days that are listed as unhealthy. So that, I think, was what caused those peaks, so to speak. So other than that, our data, if you want to kind of compare, we are in a little bit better spot in terms of air quality than some of the other locations around Indiana. So if you look, we had 4 days considered unhealthy for sensitive groups. Marion County had 17 of those, Lake County 16, et cetera, et cetera. So we would be just about the lowest out of this, except for Monroe County. They were just slightly lower than us, but in the same ballpark, as well as Allen County, similar ballpark, and so on. There are several other pieces of information that are included in this table, and some of the notes are kind of what I would refer you to for a better explanation of exactly what the numbers in each of these columns mean. So I can go over a couple of those really quick that I think might be informative. So certainly this one I think is maybe the most confusing. So it has number of days, and then it has several different things listed. So carbon dioxide, particulate matter, et cetera. So kind of what that's looking at is on days where there was an air pollutant measured that has some kind of issue. So if we go back up here, what was the kind of worst pollutant, or the most dangerous pollutant, or the most common, I guess. So the particulate matter 2.5 was by far the most. That was what we saw for us on Tippecanoe County. For every day that was measured, there were only 349 out of the 365 days that had readings. And for all of those in 2023, that was the dominant pollutant, which is very consistent with what we see in Tippecanoe County. Other counties did have a few other different things, but we don't live there, so we don't necessarily track that as closely. There are also a few notes about some of the things that historically were tracked by the EPA, and it kind of discusses how some of those were removed. Yeah, so this data was assembled as of May 8th. So the 2024 data is current through May 8th, which is by now a little bit old and outdated. But we wouldn't have full 2024 data by now anyway. So we thought we'd just kind of lump that in there for reference, just in case people were curious as to what's going on this year. So that's kind of where we're at with this. This is something that we're going to continue to track over time. One of the goals of our Metropolitan Transportation Plan is to make our area more sustainable, more environmentally resilient. And so tracking some of this data and looking at potential mitigation where appropriate is definitely one way that we can work towards achieving that goal that was in the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So with that, I would take any questions about this data or comments if there are any. Okay, I will take that as there are no questions or comments, at least from those attending. But since we're kind of near the end of our program, I will pause about a minute or so to let the stream catch up and see if we have any comments on that. And while we wait for that minute, this is probably a good time for me to make an announcement. Some of you may have heard this, but our former executive director, David Hiddle, did leave us earlier this year to take another position in Bloomington. And we're very excited to have his replacement, who was promoted from within our office. So Ryan O'Gara, who I think some of you may know, is our new executive director. So we're very excited to have him on board and to kind of continue some of the good work that he's been doing for many years here. So Ryan, do you want to say anything while we're waiting to see if we have any comments?
Sure thing. Thank you, Tim. Yeah, I just wanted to say hello and just kind of reintroduce myself. A lot of you have worked with me in the past in various capacities. I'm at about 15 and a half years in, so I just wanted to let everybody know of obviously this announcement, and I'm pleased to kind of take on this new role and probably let go of some things I used to do, let other folks kind of take the reins on some stuff I've done in the past, and kind of take on these new responsibilities. So I'm real excited to kind of jump into this and continue to serve the county in this new capacity. So just wanted to say hello, since I know these meetings are quarterly and we don't all get together that often. So I wanted to make sure I got in so that you're aware of the change in leadership. And as Tim said, I'm excited to kind of continue the good work that we've been doing. I have, thoroughly enjoyed working in this county. It's been a ton of fun, as I think as evidenced by just all the years I've been here so far. And I just want to keep things going and continue the positive work we've been doing. So I look forward to working with you all in this new capacity moving forward. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ryan. So with that, I think we've probably given more than enough time for the stream to catch up for the technical content. So Aria, did we have any questions or comments come through on YouTube or Facebook?
Yeah, currently there is no public comment on Facebook or YouTube.
Okay, very good. Thank you for checking on that. So with that, I will entertain any additional questions or comments from the committee. And if there are none, then we will consider moving to adjournment. But just in case anyone does have anything that they wanted to mention, we want to make sure that that doesn't get missed. All right, well, in that case, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Is there anyone that would like to second that?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Steve. So I guess we'll go ahead and just to be formal, we'll take a roll call vote for adjournment. So Lynn Nelson,
Yes.
Steve Clevenger,
Yes.
Gene Croshin,
Yes.
and Stuart Frescus.
Yes.
All right, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned. Our next meeting will be on September 11th. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, and everybody have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Yeah, good night.
Thanks.